Hi folks. When I was looking into Zen meditation lately by reading Brad Warner and even doing a little bit of Zazen practice myself, I noticed a vague parallel with something that I used to do a long time ago when I was a Christian. In the early days when I was a Christian, back when I was about 19 or 20. And I didn't call it meditation back then, but I kind of think that's what it was. Now, in Zazen, what you do is you put yourself into the lotus position, or you just cross your legs. If you can't do the lotus position, and you prop your bum up on a cushion so that you can get your knees a little bit lower than your waist. And the point of that is that it allows you to keep your spine nice and straight without too much effort. And you put your hands in this sort of a fashion around the navel. And the reason for this is just that it gives you something. There's nothing terribly mystical about why you get into that position. Again, the lotus thing is just for the spine. It's good for your posture, because in some cases when you do Zazen, the idea is to sit there for hours. So you don't want to be causing, you don't want to be slouching, and you don't want to be giving yourself a bad back either. This thing with the hands, I guess you could do anything with your hands, but it seems to put the shoulders in a good position for sitting that way for quite some time. And it also puts the body in a kind of a focus where you're not distracted because you have to keep your hands in that position. Now, the point of Zazen is not to initiate some kind of altered state of consciousness, not to attain enlightenment. The word means just sitting. And you keep your eyes open, but typically you just look at the wall, or you put yourself in surroundings where there's nothing to distract you. And the idea is you just let your mind do what it wants to do, but you don't intellectualize anything that comes up. Your mind may wander and think about things and bring certain things to your attention, but you don't start intellectualizing. For instance, the idea of sitting in that posture while trying to think up all sorts of things that you want to do tomorrow, or trying to work out your family's finances or something like that, that's not Zazen, right? Empty your mind, but not in some kind of trance-like way. Just sit there and stop taking in new information. That's the idea. You don't want to be distracted by anything. And I've done this for maybe 20 minutes, possibly half an hour. And I don't know if I'm really getting anything out of it as such, but according to Brad Warner, the reasoning behind this is that you're allowing your mind breathing room, if you will. Have you ever, let me put it this way, have you ever had one of those days where you find yourself constantly searching for all kinds of distractions because you don't want to deal with the contents of your own mind? Because maybe you're guilty about something, or maybe you're stressed about something, and you just don't want to stop. You just want to keep moving. I've had that, and it's kind of a horrible feeling, because it even manifests itself as not wanting to go to bed at night. You kind of want to just sit in the living room and fall asleep with the television on so that you're still distracted. You don't want to lie there in the dark having to deal with the contents of your own mind. So Zazen is a way of saying stop and deal with yourself. It's not a way of escaping from the ego. The idea is that you just let whatever thoughts want to come up. So it's a way essentially of cleaning out the garbage from your mind. And Brad Warner talks about some intense experiences where he's been doing it for a lengthy session, and suddenly out of nowhere he feels terrified, like something has arisen from the depths of his unconscious, something that he had repressed, and he feels terrified and he can't understand why. But this is what the mind wanted to do. And by going through that process, something within you is dealt with. Now, I haven't had anything dramatic like that happen to me, but it impresses me that, this form of meditation impresses me. Now, what I really came to talk about was I started thinking about something that I did as a Christian around age 19 or 20 that is similar to this, very similar, but I didn't know at the time that it was like a form of meditation, that it was a bit like Zazen. I was really obsessed with making my faith something real and dynamic in my life. I did not want to be a nominal Christian. I did not want to be somebody who just put their bum on the church pews on Sunday and then forgot about God for the rest of the week. I wanted the real thing. I wanted a relationship with God, as it's called. So I became very fascinated with prayer. And I wanted to learn a lot about prayer, and I wanted to practice prayer. And I knew there was an awful lot of fakery in prayer, an awful lot of fancy words and phrases, and people were approaching God in a way that if you really thought about it, it's a bit silly. You'd hear people praying in church, and if you just imagined God standing in front of that person, listening to that person, picture God standing there as an actual human being, listening to the way that person is addressing him. It really sounds very silly sometimes when you hear the way some people pray. The kind of weird dynamic that they do with their voice, trying to sound all very grandiose and everything. It really sounds silly when you think about the fact that they're addressing a person. Anyway, my idea of prayer, and it was all done very intuitively, not with much study. In fact, the things I studied about prayer didn't really teach me a lot. Anyway, I used to go out at night, late in the evening when it was dark. And there's this building that no one would be at. And I would go around the side of it where there were just this little set of steps. And I would sit there, and it would be dark and the stars would be out at times, and I would just sit there and let myself be aware of the presence of God, of the reality of God. And quite often I would not say anything or do anything, just sit there. And what's Zazen? It's just sitting. Now, I know in Buddhism there's no concept of God as such. Not in the monotheistic sense anyway. And in Christianity there is. But I just want to draw attention to the fact that as a Christian I was going to this place to focus my mind in one particular direction and stop taking in new information. And I would be there for an hour or more. And I would do this several times a week. Maybe every night of the week sometimes. Now, it sounds like an awfully boring thing to do, but clearly I was getting something out of it because I kept coming back to do it. Now, there were times when I did speak to God and I would get certain concerns off my chest or whatever. And sometimes I would think to myself, maybe I should be praising God and thanking Him and going through the motions of these ritualistic things that I was being taught that prayer was all about. But none of that came very naturally to me. It just seemed to be enough for me to just be in the presence of God, to just be there and be aware of the divine and to bask in that. And in a sense, what I was doing when I did bring my concerns before God was I was allowing myself to be completely naked with God. Now, you all know I don't believe in God, not in the traditional sense anyway. I don't think there is a being up there who listens to me. But here's the thing. if I project something, an imaginary something, and I call it God, and I address that being, that's kind of like talking to yourself, isn't it? But that's not something that you should dismiss so easily, because there's a great deal of value in talking to yourself in that manner, in being naked with yourself. For instance, the idea of this God is that he's all-seeing. So there's no point in trying to hide from him, or in other words, because you're projecting this out of yourself, there's no point in trying to hide from yourself. Get it? You're not repressing anything. You're doing what is done in Zazen, but you're doing it in a more convoluted way. In Zazen, you just sit there and you don't stop anything from arising that wants to arise. Whereas with this form of Christian prayer that I was doing, I was projecting an image of someone who was listening to me that I could project my problems and my issues onto, and therefore deal with them, be freed from them, have them expressed rather than repressed. So I was going home from these sessions cleaned out, the garbage cleaned out of my mind. And that really, that was significant. If anything, I think that side of Christianity was the one saving grace in the whole mess. Because, you were, as a Christian, you were taught these life-denying rules. You were taught that carnality was a bad thing, that the animal side of human nature was sinful and had to be stopped and harnessed. And so you were constantly, because you couldn't succeed at this, you were constantly on this, failure is built into it. You were constantly failing and then confessing your sin and repenting and getting the joy back, and then failing again and confessing and repenting and getting the joy back and failing again. But at least you were able to actually deal with it, not repress it, which would have been, I think, very detrimental to your health. And there are those kinds of people who can't be honest with themselves, or even be honest with their idea of God. Especially if you're one of these people who tries to be holy, and you feel like you're getting somewhere with that. And then you have some horrible impulse to do something that's terrible and forbidden. And, you have a tendency to go, oh, I'm not like that. No, I'm not like that. I'm not capable of doing anything like that. I'm righteous. So you repress it. You go, oh, no, I'm not like that. Just push that back down inside myself. That's unhealthy. Better to just acknowledge who you are. Whatever it may be. So I was the sort of Christian who did acknowledge those things. Whereas there's the other type, the unhealthy type, that tries to put on a facade. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you know that there are people like that. It's funny to me, my detractors, the Christians who say to me, oh, Darrell, you were never a real Christian. Listen to what I've just told you here. I've never really talked about this with anyone, to be honest. This thing I used to do, by going around the side of this building, spending an hour every night sitting on my own. There's people who think that makes me a real weirdo, And I guess I am a weirdo. But weird is just another way of saying you're not the same as everybody else. You're not common. And who wants to be common? So yeah, I just wanted to share this with you, that I noticed this parallel between Zazen and between the Christian experience of prayer, when prayer is done in a heartfelt way. And I think it was something I'm almost in danger of forgetting on the path that I'm on now. forgetting the importance of just stopping once in a while and dealing with the contents of your own mind, and stop rushing around all the time. Just slow down and stop and allow yourself to catch up with yourself, so to speak. Allow your mind its own breathing space, and that's all I think meditation is. So you can do it by going for a walk if you want. You can do it by just sitting on a mountaintop and just enjoying the view. Just stop running around frantically, filling your life with one distraction after another, and filling your life with stress because it's far too fast. Because when you really think about it, we're running around going nowhere, because where are we going? We're heading for the grave, aren't we? So what's the big rush? What are we trying to get to? There's nothing to get to. So just slow down and enjoy life a little bit more, and be in the moment a little bit more, and allow your mind to do what it needs to do, which is just to regulate you. And by that I mean the unconscious part of the mind, because there's the unconscious and then there's the part up front, the conscious part, which is really just a kind of scanner on the world around you. But it's all your mind, and it has to be treated properly. So, Christianity wasn't all bad after all.